We are live.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Joe.
Hello. Welcome to The Show Must Go On line. Today's guests are Elinor T Vanderburg and Drew Vanderburg. How are y'all doing today?
Really
Pretty
good.
great. Yeah.
Amazing.
Great. Really happy to be here. Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Could be better. Could be worse.
You know what? That's a great way of looking at things throughout this whole pandemic. It's like things could be better. Things could be worse.
For 2020, we're like a solid 8.5 today.
I like 8.5 is pretty good on like any day. So I'm especially happy to hear it today.
Yeah, it's like a normal 4, but like cool, you know?
We've been averaging a 4 in 2020,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yes. And my friend Andy's commenting, great outlook. So you're already spreading that positive vibe.
Great. Hi, Andy.
Hi.
What's up?
So for anyone watching, we're going to see your comments throughout. You can ask questions and just comment or just sit back, relax, and enjoy. This is all up to you. We appreciate you joining us today on Giving Tuesday. That's so exciting. Yes.
Love.
We will talk all about Giving Tuesday and SheNYC and all of our favorite nonprofits and charities. But first, let's hear both of your origin stories. What got you into theater? Take it away.
Oh, you first.
Okay, great. I love theater, and I'm so glad to be on this show right now. This is so fun. So I guess my origin story. Okay, I was in the Boston Boy Choir when I was a kid. I was like a boy soprano, and so I sang in the church, and then I just loved music, and I loved having audiences, I guess. And so then I just wanted to keep doing that. When I got to high school, we actually didn't have a theater program in the choir school. So then when I got to high school, I was like, what is this thing where you still sing, but you also dance and, there are friends, it's funny and jazzy, so then I learned musical theater, fell in love, wanted to come to New York, and ended up here going to college here. And that's the next chapter of the story.
My chapter 1 is, wow, I saw a production of Guys and Dolls that was done by the 8th graders when I was in 3rd grade. And I fell in love with the role of Adelaide. Because she had a little tiny squeaky little voice, and I was like, wait a minute, hold on, there's like people who have tiny squeaky little voices that are singing and have these bombastic stories. And so I think I just I don't know, I fell in love with it, and I was just waiting until I got to 8th grade so that I could audition for the play. And the first play I did was Little Shop of Horrors. I was Audrey. It totally came full circle in terms of the voice thing. And same thing. I was like, oh my gosh, Friends. I was like, it's my one-stop shop for doing something that I'm passionate about and storytelling and hanging out with like 80 people who are all playing plants right now. This is great. And that is also what led me to New York for school. I talked to a lot of people and they're like, well, there's no money in theater. And I'm like, but there's Friends. So I'm the reality show contestant that was here to make friends entirely. That's chapter 1.
Okay, let's definitely address chapter 1 and then we'll get into chapter 2 after. I love the, let's go for the friends aspect. Let's go for the passion. And then job, it'll come, right? It'll be a thing.
Yeah, well, it'll happen. Something will happen. But if you're not with your friends, then what are you doing?
And it's about a community too. I think in the boy choir, we were all from all over different places in Boston, so I didn't really stay friends with those folks. But once I started doing theater in high school, I'm still friends with those people. A lot of them came to New York with me. Some of my groomsmen in my wedding were people that I played, Riff in West Side Story, and I was Chino in West Side Story, or whatever, So it's always the musical theater kind of became, and also the a cappella group and the choir became my best friends to this day. So that's why we did it, right? Not for the fame or the glory or the money, just for the community.
Yeah.
The theater community, whether you're talking about like the high school theater or choir or a cappella or a college group or off-Broadway, off-Broadway, a play festival, Broadway, there's so many things that like being in the moment or going through tech together or anything like that where there's an experience that is so unique to those people who are in the room where it happens. It really connects you for life. So let's hear chapter 2 of your stories.
I always start this one. Do you want to start it?
No, you always do.
All right. So let's see, chapter 2 of the story. I was a freshman at NYU. It was my second semester, first day. I'd signed up for a playwriting elective. It was January. It was like, it was January in New York. Like, what do you want? And so I definitely put on my best bubble dress and like went to class and sat down. And I was like, this is going to be my year. So our professor, Jackie Allen, was going around the classroom and going in a circle and asking everybody why they decided to take this playwriting course as an elective. And people were saying like, yeah, I decided to take this class because I really need a deadline, or like, I decided to take this class because I just really want to work on my writing skills. I normally write like poetry, but like I really want to. And then we get to this guy who's sitting across the table from me, and he's like, yeah, I really want to take this class because I just think my writing should be read by everybody in the world. And I'm just going to like write really awesome stuff. And like, I was like, I'm sorry, what? I went back to my dorm and I was like, there's this guy in my class and he thinks he's so cool. And he's talking about how he's going to write all this stuff. And I spent like a whole month being like, who is this dude? He brings in his work for the first time, little 10-minute play. And it was awesome. It was so good. Everyone's like, this is amazing. Oh my gosh. They're like rolling around on the seats. They're cracking up. And from that day forth, my mantra became, I have to write a better play than Drew Vanderburg. I have to write a better play than Drew. So I would stay up until sunrise the night before class being like, oh, like write better than that guy. You can't be shown up. You can't be shown up. So we got through the whole semester. It was a spring, blah, 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 summer break. So in my play, it was like fine. It was like terrible. It was like 18 years old. It was awful.
It was great.
It's terrible. But then that at the end of the summer, I'm walking through Washington Square Park, and this guy wearing these little John Lennon glasses is walking by, and we seriously like walked this way, and then we're like, wait, and both of us backtracked, and I like went up to him and I took these little glasses off of his face, and I was like, oh, Drew Vanderburg. And he's like, yeah, hey, you're that girl that was in my playwriting class. Hey, I really like that play that you wrote for your final. It would be super cool if we got to like hang out at some point. That would be really great. I was like, yeah, that play that I totally wasn't trying to compete with you with at all. It was really great. And we ended up working on, we were assigned to the same project in the fall semester where I was stage managing and he was the dramaturg. And he asked me out and I was like, yeah. And I think our date consisted of like, we returned one of his library books and then we just like went to his house and talked until 4:00 in the morning.
Had hot dogs on Wonder Bread.
We had hot dogs on Wonder Bread, which was the meal that my grandmother used to make for me and my sister, like specifically on Wonder Bread with ketchup. And he was all like, I don't know, I've only got Wonder Bread. And I was like, I don't know. I think I'm in love with you forever. It was great. My roommate came to pick me up. And by pick me up, I mean, like, she met me and then we took the subway back down 2 blocks. And she was like, so how was your date? And I was like, Jackie, this is my roommate, my old roommate, Jackie Sherwood. And I was like, Jackie, I feel bubbles in my skin. I feel bubbles. I feel like electric right now. Electric bubbles. I've never felt like this before. And I was like, yeah, this dude's the one. At that point, I was 19. So definitely gut trust in, but yeah, it was great.
Wow. It makes me shy when she says all this stuff. I was that in the playwriting class. Obviously, totally told myself.
It was true.
But I thought her plays were amazing too. And I was like, who's that girl who wrote this hilarious plays? And she doesn't even know. Because I was just falling asleep like on the side of the hallway, like before class. I was like, people showed up in my pajamas, like sleeping on the floor.
He was napping everywhere.
So I didn't realize that I could like actually like maybe find love until, the following year. And it all worked out.
Yeah.
So anyway, we fell in love at NYU. We started making theater together. and we do all these things now, like design, directing, performance.
Yeah, I would costume design shows that you would direct, and you would lighting or set design shows that I would direct. And yeah,
and that was 15 years ago. Now
Yeah.
here we are.
yeah. It was only like 2012, I would say. We were like, we have this idea for a show. We should totally write it together. We don't know how to do that, actually, but let's like tap back into that playwriting class and see what we can do.
Right.
And,
now we write plays together. That's
yeah.
really the thing that worked out. Like we were
Yeah.
designing and kind of just dancing around in the same community.
Yeah.
And then we were like, wait, remember how we fell in love in playwriting class? We should actually do that and make a theater company that does that.
Yeah.
So here we are. Chapter 3.
I am obsessed with this story on so many levels. It is truly that, like, oh, I need to beat him, and then it's like, oh, but I like what she's doing, but secretly you're both like da 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 da, or
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm not worrying about it, and then you star-crossed lovers in Washington Square Park, like the.
No, it's a bad holiday rom-com. Like it's true. It's the whole formula. I did not intend this. I am not a rom-com girl. No. Yeah.
No.
You're
we
just
like
living one.
the dark,
Exactly.
you know.
So going from performance to then writing and now writing together, does that play at different parts of your mental space? And also writing together as a couple, like, does that ever go into your marriage of like, oh, so this one time, blah, blah, blah. I don't know.
Yeah. It does. I mean, first of all, we write plays about things that we care about. And so we might be like, wow, somebody needs to make a play about that. Or wouldn't it be cool if, you know, an idea we thought of years ago, and then we finally start writing it. But more than that, it's like we argue about every single line in the script. You know, like we are the toughest critics to each other because we can like spend all day getting into the nitty gritty, and we have no filter with each other. So we just like
Exactly.
You know.
Yeah, really. No, it's really true. We can be exceptionally truthful and no padding, and like, you know, we're both water science too. So I'm not going to say it's not without one of us being like, okay. And like,
we're licking our wounds for a couple days, and then we go
No.
back in and fix it.
yeah. And it's like, hey, so, you know, like I did like that part of the scene, you know, and it's like, yeah, it's fine. But no, it's great. And I appreciate how much you hold me to what I could do better. It's really great. You know, I feel like you really hold me accountable for myself, and when you'll look at a line, you'll be like, Ellie, you're just trying to paint the idea across. And I'm like, no, I wasn't. Okay, you're right. I was just trying to. And so it's always great to be able to go back in there. Drew is like the best editor I know also. Really is like, can go in there and get real detailed and everything. I think when the clock starts ticking, I'm way better at like broad strokes and everything than going in with a fine-tooth comb. But Drew will never sacrifice the tiniest details, which I think like brings that extra little dose of magic.
But I would just add that I wouldn't do it at all if it weren't for Ellie. I wouldn't have gone back to playwriting, you know, because my thing was always music. And so I think around 2012, when we started working on the Human Incubator and it was a musical, then I because I was excited to do music, I got into script and book and lyrics. And then next thing you know, it was like, oh, we're playwrights. But I think I would have just like probably never written another play in my life if Ellie hadn't pushed me to do it.
I'll push you forever.
Yeah.
Your life changed forever that day. Wow.
Because we had like a whole period in the middle where we were doing performance art and installation art and other types of like kind of non-scripted, more experiential art.
Yeah.
You know,
I did a lot of performance art.
Yeah.
And you were doing the poem room and everything. And,
yeah. Rap music and jazz music. But there was no like, we were never like, let's actually make a script. And then we did. It was great.
Which was helpful though, because I feel like we after we left school, we really started working in a lot of mediums that where we were kind of more how should I say, like you know, what is the message behind your performance art? Like, what is the commentary on the world? And I don't think that those were necessarily the unique driving question that was asked when we were getting our theater education. There were certainly some exceptions, and obviously we were taking classes where we were like, look at how political theater can be, and we're like, oh, that's awesome. But in my heart of hearts, I was like, I'm Audrey in Little Shop, you know what I mean? And
yeah,
and so I think it was awesome to be able to go into that realm of creative thinking and then bring it back into the theatrical landscape and everything, because we're like, okay, well, what's the message? What's going on in this year right now? Who are we casting? What are the lived experiences of those who we're casting? You know, and just looking at the greater picture and how the impact is going to land beyond it being like a static, or I guess in our case, non-static piece of writing and music.
So just a quick note for anyone who sees this dog just running in and out. That is Slimbo. I love him dearly. And he always decides that this is the perfect time to run in and out of the door and to lay down and then to start barking at the trucks going by. So I hope it's not too distracting.
It is the perfect time to start barking at the trucks going by.
It really is. It's like he has this like mental timer. So it's 2:00 here in Washington State.
Oh yeah. It's very bright out there. It's practically getting dark over here.
People always get really confused because they're like, where are you? It's too light out.
Oh, I'm looking at the comments. Yeah, shout out, Andy. Yeah, I feel that. Thank you.
Yeah. So it's definitely rom-com season. So Slim is also not a rom-com dog, so don't even try it. A quick note here, just for the two of you and anyone watching at home, is the light there distracting? Is it making me go out of focus? Like, I can go keep closing the door, but I have a feeling he will just knock it back open.
No, it's fine. I mean, you can't see what it is. It's just a lot of white light behind you.
Yeah.
But it doesn't affect the foreground at all.
No interference.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. It's always good to get those technical difficulties out of the way. So let's quickly talk about the present, and then we'll go back to the past and like your earlier works and the stuff. But how has being in quarantine and the Black Lives Matter movement and all of that affected being a playwright and an artist right now?
A lot.
Every single way.
Yeah. You know, I feel like gosh, it's so wild thinking back in March when I remember being on the phone with my mom. We were like, how long do you think it's going to last? And she was like, maybe like 6 weeks. And I was like, yeah, we'll be back in May. Like, I'll plan a trip for the summer. I can't wait for the 4th of July cookout. And now those of us who had birthdays in March are like, oh, we're going to get a quarantine birthday too. Like, wow, this is, so, you know, it's just crazy thinking back all the way to the beginning of this. So, I mean, you know, I feel like the first thing that happened with theater was that people were like, wow, my show got canceled and I got paid out for a week and that's it. Now my contract has just been terminated. And so it was the obvious realization that it's like not a sustainable injury if there is some global crisis that goes on and suddenly all these people are, you know, totally out of work. I remember reading an article and I don't remember what publication, but it was talking about a lot of actors who are playing child and teenage roles who are like, the future is so uncertain because now we're going to age out of those parts maybe by the time we come back, and how heartbreaking that is. And these are people who, you know, whose parents were like, all right, let's do it. We're going to get the apartment in New York City because this is going to be your career. And so, I mean, that was happening on a very, you know, at the top echelon. And, you know, in terms of our, you know, downest of town theaters and our communities and everything, it was just really, you know, it was just as rickety and rocky. And so that happened first. And the conversation surrounding that really started to be like, well, what can we do to change the industry? How can we make sure that this doesn't happen again? What can we put into place so that this has better healthcare? This has just better security. And then the events of May happened with George Floyd's murder. And then the conversation just expanded and became a whole other thing, because, talking about equity and representation and in theater, it just presented a whole lot of other conversations. And I feel like personally that the question became less about like, when are we going to reopen, and more like, we better not reopen until we fix all of this, because we have the time to do it now. And if people are sitting around being like, well, don't worry, we're going to bring this show back as soon as we can, and they're only making moves on that end and not figuring out how, I'm like, I call BS. I call BS on this entire thing if you're not looking at the world around you and figuring out how you can adapt. It is obvious that the system is not working for everybody involved. And like, once again, as the person who got into this to make friends and to be around community, I'm like, how can you leave people behind like this? I truly believe that theater people are like some of the most awesome people in the world and really want to just embrace everybody. And like, that's what being a storyteller means. You just want to bring everybody close and allow people to experience worlds outside of their own and just feel that magic for a little bit.
And to tell their stories.
Yeah. And to tell their stories and to live in a realm outside of what they have ever believed is possible, and to see themselves represented. And so for the producer who's like, we're not gonna, that's not our wheelhouse, we're not gonna worry about that, I'm like, well, goodbye. I'm sorry. And I think that one of the things that I have, encouraged to anyone who will listen to me is that there's a lot of people who are like, well, that's happening in that industry. There's a lot of things happening in a lot of industries. And I'm like, yes, but we're all connected in the circle of life. Even if you have only come to see one show on Broadway once a year, then you are implicated in this struggle, because you can fight with your dollars. You can fight with the choices. You can do a little research and see what are the shows that you are supporting, who is producing those shows, who's working backstage, what are the stories that they're bringing to the table, who has the power, who is not being listened to or accounted for. And you can really you can make decisions and like choose what you want to see happen in the future based on that.
You are just hitting so many points there. It's truly, I appreciate you saying all that, because if you don't change it now, it's never going to change. This is the perfect storm of a pandemic and a civil rights movement. And if this isn't fanning a spark into a flame, what is?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think, can I add something that Ellie has been doing great work, I think, and definitely educating me to be married to a woman of color, but also all of our friends. We have so many groups that we work with where there is less representation of people of color. And so Ellie has been taking a leadership role, which I'm really proud of her. And I think it's like, because your question was also like, how has this affected our practice? And I think one thing is like, Ellie has written news articles, like Ellie has revised mission statements, right? I mean, you could speak to this, but it's like your voice has become a very centered voice in our community for like, what can we do better?
Which is definitely daunting, because, I am one person and I do not, in any way, I'm not trying to speak for all, but I just think it's, I don't know. I'm a little sister. I feel like I was always the person who was like, but guy, like on the playground and everything. And so my kind of natural tendency is to like, but what about this? I'm like, are we thinking about this sort of thing? And I have tons to learn. I have the whole lifetime, multiple lifetimes of things to learn as well. But I just think that so much of where we got caught up in in the theatrical landscape, entertainment landscape, is just this notion of time. We attended some of the Broadway Advocacy Coalition seminars in June, which are amazing. And I remember one of the panelists was saying that this notion of time and rushing is just this symptom of white supremacy. And when you think about it, I mean, what's the saying? Time is money. And in the theater industry, it's like, well, you're replaceable. Like, oh, you can't do that twirl, like, okay, we're gonna get out. Or if you busted your voice, okay, well, out, we're gonna replace you with someone else. And it's not a good feeling. And so at what point did we let it get this way, and it doesn't have to be. And so I think it's just what you were saying. It's like, we have the time to be able to do this now. It is the perfect storm, but there is time, and we do not know when the opening date is going to be. And so why not go into, our rooms and everything and work on that, with a start in the spaces that we have access to, work on those, and just continue to build outwards that way.
I think the Broadway Advocacy Coalition's doing fabulous work at educating, at saying, we should have been here years ago, but if you're joining now, it's better now than never. So just sit back. Sometimes if you are white, maybe don't necessarily ask the questions, just sit back and learn, and then you can do your own research. And I think there's just been so much that I didn't know. And this year I'm trying really hard to just take that all in and be like, okay, I should have known this earlier, but I didn't. And so as long as I make sure to be more conscious about being better about it in the future, that's all we can ask of ourselves. And something, I wrote this down because during those meetings, someone said, I think it was Daniel J. Watt said, diversity isn't equality.
Yeah.
And that really stuck to me, because especially like you're saying, the people backstage and the ensemble members and the director, and, you have a few diverse people on stage and you're like, oh, great. But then you look and it's all white, or it's all cisgendered, or it's all, I've heard you also speak about ableism in the theater. And I think that's a really important topic, especially when we can tie it back into Dancing Girl and your play. And so let's talk about ableism in theater and your inspiration to want to be more inclusive, and also just speak to that as a piece of theater and as a writer.
Sure. Oh, I miss Dancing Girl. I love Dancing Girl.
Yeah.
It's not over yet.
Yeah, we want to bring this show back for sure.
Yeah. So we decided to work on an adaptation of The Hunchback of Notre Dame. To be totally honest, I love the Disney version. I realized that of all of the Disney movies that I watched on loop, it wasn't any of the princess movies. It was that one. That's the one that I was like, hey, my 5-year-old cousin's here. No, we can't watch Cinderella. We're going to watch Hunchback of Notre Dame right now. And it was always a special one for my family. And we, there's the
You also love Les Mis, and it's Victor Hugo.
Right.
We're Francophiles, and so the whole.
Yeah. And the French musical adaptation of Hunchback is the 3rd most popular music globally, which is crazy. After Les Mis and Phantom, it's number 3, and it was actually going to come to Lincoln Center in September. Now they're going to do it in September 2021, they say. So I will see you there, naturally, because we shall be seeing it. But it led us on this path to reading the original novel and looking at all of the film adaptations that have happened since the 1910s. There was a 1918 version of a silent film adaptation. Basically there's been one almost every decade for the last 100 years. And in addition to realizing that our beloved feminist Esmeralda character was really kind of an anomaly for the Disney version, which came out in 1996, we also...
Meaning all the other versions, she's not a feminist icon at all. She's objectified, and really just her character motivations are all wrong, and it's very disappointing.
And Hugo wrote her that way, to be beautiful but very silly, I think is the line. And it's oof, okay. So in addition to learning about that, we learned that the character of Quasimodo is deaf in the original novel. And while some of the film adaptations honored that, he was never played by a deaf performer. Even in the most recent, in the version of Hunchback that premiered at the Paper Mill Playhouse, that was something that came up. And when Michael Arden, I believe, played Quasimodo, it's like, well, I was doing my own research into this character, and did you know this? And, you know, how are we going to address this in the script? And so they kind of reworked the narrative of the storytelling so that the singing was more happening in Quasimodo's mind, and that was the justification and everything. But all in all, we were like, well, we're very interested in writing this adaptation and kind of tweaking it for our modern sensibilities. But also, it's crucial to us that we honor the fact that Quasimodo is deaf in this. And as and this was, you know, I did not know anything about the deaf community. I did not know anything about the deaf theater community. And it really, I think I would say that the process of going down that road just really continued to open door after door of like, oh, okay. And so now I'm learning more about what American Sign Language is. And I'm learning that American Sign Language is totally different from sign language in other languages. And I'm learning about the origin, and I'm learning about how it is not a direct translation from English to ASL. And, you know, it really, it was mind-blowing because I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know how much I didn't know. And it was so, I was very upset to see how our worlds can be, you know, seemingly just moving alongside each other and not intersecting in so many ways, because hearing people and do not, I don't know, it's like the hearing world. It's so easy. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to put this into words.
Well, like, did you know that you need to have a director of American Sign Language in addition to the regular director? So it's an example of how we went into the process sort of with the tools that we had gained from going to a hearing theater program. And then we had to not just rework some elements of the script, but the entire process itself in order to welcome in non-hearing folks. And that made the process so much richer for us. And I think it made the script stronger. And it also goes right back to what Ellie was saying before about how, like, rushing is a tenet of white supremacy, you know? And that, like, if we had been like, and even like the budget thing, if we had been like, oh no, we don't have the time to do it, or we're not going to pay for interpreters to be present at every rehearsal, then we wouldn't have been able to do it. So instead, we said, we're going to make it work. And that's the point. And that's actually part of why we call our company Underlords, because we come at the material from underneath the material. We don't say this is what the script demands or this is what we want as producers. We say this is what the experience of making the show demands, or perhaps the social context or the history of the content demands it. And so then we do it from under as opposed to from above, abstractly speaking.
Yeah. Andy, you're in my head here, and you're saying what I was trying to say. Yes, exactly. We don't think about the dilemmas the deaf community runs into that the hearing community takes for granted. We're talking about accessibility and talking about how, you know, even as our eyes were, you know, it's like what folks have been saying over the summer and everything. Like, once you notice that that racism is present, your eyes are open to it, and you're suddenly seeing it everywhere. Once you realize that ableism is present, you're suddenly like, oh my gosh, what do you mean that for an entire 3-month run, there are 2 deaf and hard of hearing performances that are being offered, and sometimes the producing agents were like, oh, we should do this, let's do it on let's do it this Friday, it's a Tuesday, let's do it on Friday,
or like so the Wednesday matinee, because and we're like, no, do it on Saturday night, 8:00, main prime time,
right? And so and just realize how there's so much there's just so many barriers. There's just so many barriers that are set up because there isn't that degree of understanding. And you were talking about this as well in terms of our process, but were we to start over the next time we do this show, I'm going to be very excited to start these conversations not just the two of us, but to have our director of ASL right there next to us as we're starting the entire process. Because again, we definitely were like, all right, we're doing this. We submitted the show to the SheNYC festival. We were like, this is awesome. This is great. We're so excited. And then as we continued to dive deeper and work on the script, we were like, oh, cool. We know what we have to do. So yeah, it was totally the best piece of theater I think I've ever worked on, and really the most meaningful for us.
I want to respond to one other thing that Andy put in the chat too, which also like calls into question another main theme of the show, which is this idea that Esmeralda was a Roma person and wasn't actually from France. And that was also something we wanted to highlight, because when we were talking about doing the show in 2018, what was going on in the country was Donald Trump and all his border wall stuff with Mexico and build the wall and immigrants. And, Hadestown was coming out on Broadway with that song. So we were like, this is also super relevant for now, because Esmeralda was a part of an outcast community. We didn't want to call them gypsies because some people find that word offensive. And so we like reframed it as outcasts from all over the world who had come to France, and that the French people like Phoebus and Frollo were like the xenophobes trying to keep them out, and so we had the wall was actually a part of the show as well. And this idea that Esmeralda represented not only women and not only the deaf community, but just people of color and immigrants all over the world.
I'm learning so much, and I also want to just compliment both of you, because when I saw Dancing Girl, I was blown away at the production. Truly, I saw it twice. I brought my mom.
Thank you.
It was fun. We're not trying to like brag or anything. It's not about that. We want to share it with more people. And I think honestly, Disney like needs help with what they're doing with Hunchback right now. So we were like, this is another thesis, let's keep working, workshop it,
Yeah. But I would love for the two of you to be in that conversation with them. Just even like seeing the behind the scenes, and when I was photographing at the rehearsal process, just seeing how like the conversations were made and made sure everyone was comfortable, and the fight scenes were made so that it was very safe and very communicative. I'd never I haven't sat in on many rehearsal processes, but especially, as you were saying, to have the ASL director there as well, and just seeing how like everything worked so smoothly, and thinking, oh, so this really can just happen if we put effort into it. And I know you said about the money, but also the money that you put in, and now you have this whole community that feels seen and represented, that they can go see a play and feel so included. Come on, like it seems like a no-brainer, and I'm glad that you did that.
I mean, that's what it is. Exactly. It just seems like a no-brainer. And so it's like, oh my gosh, like why don't we do this all the time? Why don't we? I'm going to pass what you said on. Jenny Beth Snyder is our director, and Jenny Beth is just like a master at really just reading a room and kind of bringing everybody in. And she and the director of ASL and Tomasetti were really working super closely to make sure that even the seating configurations were such so that when there were notes that were being passed back and forth between performers, sight lines were there, so that people could communicate with each other without, and you also witnessed the rule of like, when we were ready to start, we weren't just like, okay, and hold. It was everybody raises their hand. Everybody raises their hand.
Anyone in the room can see we're going now.
Yeah, exactly. And you put it down, and then we know when to start the performance so that everyone's on deck, and everyone was responsible for making sure like
the scene.
Yeah, everyone was responsible for making sure that if, something was being said, if someone, in a conversation fell in, then it would be like, oh, hey, like, let's go, and we're going to make sure that everybody is in on this right now. And so that cast, that crew, everyone was so responsible and accountable for one another. It was my heart is full. My heart is forever full.
And then you even saw like the SheNYC folks, and later our Fresh Ground Pepper folks like started hiring ASL interpreters to be at their events because they had seen it through our show, you know. So anyway, it was a great learning experience.
Yeah, at the whole festival, there were ASL interpreters alongside Danielle or whoever was there standing up. And that was just like, once again, you see that now. Like, I remember in college, they always had an interpreter at like a comedy show or at a performance. And a lot of things, like nowadays, you'll have that on a screen and they'll be side by side. And it should just be so much more normalized, because it's you have normally two people so that they can switch, you know, back and forth. But it's really it's like you said earlier, Ellie, like once you see it, you can't unsee it, and you don't want to unsee it, because you realize, like, even just thinking of like Ali Stroker, Slim, it is okay, bud. He is non-stop barking. So sorry, Slim, it's okay. Come here, bud. It's fine.
Ali Stroker from Oklahoma, right?
Yes. Such a fan. Tony Award winner, so deserving, in the Deaf West production of Spring Awakening, which I so wish I could have seen. But just talking about, like, in an interview about the subway and like things that you take for granted. And then when you go on the subway and you're and like the elevator's closed, or, you know, they're doing this, and you realize like there are such few ways to really accommodate in this ableist society. And it just made me so frustrated. And I realized, like, there are so few things that if it doesn't affect you, you're fully aware of. And I think we really need to change that. I mean, there's so much about the education system that I feel like we should be more inclusive with our history and all that. But especially when we're talking about ableism and white supremacy and the effects that it has on everyday society that most people just take for granted, the first step one, be aware. Step two, see what you can do. And I just, you know, maybe one good thing of this pandemic is, like you said, the time, and making sure that we actually take the time when theater does eventually come back to the way that we semi know it, that it doesn't really go back to the way we know it, that it becomes better.
Yeah. And I would just add one thing to that, which is don't be afraid to fail. It's obviously better to try and fail than to not even try. If we had said, oh no, we can't have a deaf actor, you know, because or oh, we couldn't find an Esmeralda who also knows ASL, so now we're gonna, you know, that wouldn't have worked. Like you have to try, and I guess, like, you know, we made tons of mistakes during the process, but be humble, apologize, try again, you know, and then I guess just don't be afraid to fail, sin boldly.
And you know, and in terms of if you're not making a play about it, it's about exposure, you know. It's about taking the extra step, and instead of not clicking on the article because it has a headline that speaks to a group that isn't necessarily your own, click on the headline instead, or go and see the show, and don't say, this doesn't apply to me, and be like, well, why not? Let's actually see and find out. And because I don't think that people are inherently bad or want to shut other people out. I think it's just about lack of exposure, which then just turns into fear. And, you know, that's why they say that it's so important for, like, kids to be engaged in a whole lot of different experiences at early ages. And because then, you know, you can go boldly into your adult life and be like, oh yeah, I get this, or oh yeah, I saw this before, and not be afraid to fail, as you say, and ask questions, and to be wrong. There's so much fear about being wrong and being vulnerable. And oh gosh, I just want everyone to be as vulnerable as possible all the time. Everyone be big, goopy slimes or something. Yeah.
That's how it's done.
Yeah.
Big goopy slimes.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. So this actually goes perfectly into what I saw on your website, which is theater by misfits for misfits, and I love that. You mentioned the origin story of underlords and how, you know, going from the underside, but just like your whole mission of like and maybe also talk about the other productions that you've put out that you want to talk about, all of that.
Well, I also like to say we're ennobling the underdogs, you know? So it's like you're making all the underdogs the lords, you know? It's kind of flipping that pyramid on its head, you know? And the mission of underlords is to make plays in a more inclusive, horizontalist way that feels great for everyone in the room. And to, you know, start with the people in the room and the experience that you want to have, as opposed to the product. It's very process oriented as opposed to product oriented. And we generally do plays with some sort of a political theme, something that's like related to social issues of the day. And we just come at it from love, from a place of love. We're a new company. We're sort of still developing it. We're open to ideas, but it's all about like horizontalism. Even though we might have like someone who's technically the director or technically the lighting designer, we would want that everybody has an equal voice in the room and everyone's voice is heard. And that even if an actor has an idea about the lighting, or the director wants to you know, understand what the actor is experiencing in the costume, or, you know, the playwright, of course we're the playwrights, but sometimes we're just like, hey, you don't like that line? Why not? Let's talk about it, you know?
It's out.
Yeah. So, you know, horizontal, collaborative, and anti-dominational theater practices.
Yeah. And by misfits, for misfits. I think this goes back to what we were mentioning earlier about how I feel like we left theater school proper, and then we're doing things in the realms of poetry and in the realm of performance art and realm of visual art, installation work, and a lot of different fields. And so I think that there was definitely a little bit of a like, oh, you guys came back to theater. And I was like, I never really thought that we left theater, but I think that it has been very important to bring in those mindsets from and some of those ideas from other disciplines to come in. So I guess we have definitely felt like misfits for a lot of what we have done. Going back to 8th grade, once again, it's like everyone there was a misfit just because we weren't on the junior varsity team. So, and I know that that is like the origin story of so many theater types. And yeah, I think it also has a lot to do with the characters that we write. We like taking plot lines and having, you know, it's our world, but there's one thing askew. In the Human Incubator, it was a world that was very similar to ours, exact same history, except for the fact that humans lay eggs. So what did that mean? It meant that, people could have 12 babies a year, or 24 if they had twins, you know, double embryo inside the egg. It meant that the debate about abortions was a thing of the past, because if you had an egg and you laid an egg and you did not want to have a baby that month, you could say, well, no, you know, I will have an omelet instead. That is
it was just
dark.
a thing that never existed in that
Yeah.
world, because people could just have free abortions anytime.
Right. Until the main character of Posey in that play actually became gestationally pregnant. And so then we had we re-engaged with all of the contemporary debate surrounding reproductive rights and reproductive ethics, but kind of taking them through this new lens of like, what if we didn't have that same history that we had to begin with? And so is this a question of emotion or science or politics? So yeah, looking at that in Dancing Girl, one of the, Esmeralda was a major misfit. She was someone who was able to dance between both worlds of her outcast group, as well as the group of the, French nobility and everything, with Phoebus, who was very taken with her. And you saw the show. That ultimately ended really badly. And in Bloodshot, the one that we did in January of this year, just like the last time I was in a theater, that took place in a world where New York City was suffering from a sleeplessness epidemic that had been going on for 3 years. And so everyone was super riddled with anxiety because of the sleeplessness plague. And we followed the story of a coroner who was having to investigate all of these cases of exploding bodies. People were just spontaneously exploding all over the place when the stress became too much. And it's how he eventually met his demise too. What are you laughing about? That is like a whole mess.
That's the most insane show ever.
No, yeah.
Certainly for misfits.
Yeah.
But you always write these characters that are like subversive, usually people of color in lead roles, like going through really hard time in their lives, some crazy stuff that's happening to them.
Yeah.
So they're very much misfits.
Yeah. But also we like to be good time in the room. Like, come to our rehearsals, there will be food. Come to our audition, there will be hugs.
That's right. That's right.
That's all you could ask for. Food and hugs and theater.
Yeah.
What a great day.
And I guess we also try to just do like more progressive models of like theater, I guess, producing, whatever that means. Like when you're doing your casting, you're going to be super aware of all the racial and gender components of your casting, and to the point where like you math everything out and make sure it makes perfect sense so that everything is a clear storytelling, right? Also, like for people to get paid, we want to make sure we pay everybody. We want to make sure that in the future, we decided we would also try to like make it so that if a show gets picked up or goes on to a longer run, that you figure out a way to make sure everybody feels a part of that. Yeah. You know, so.
Yeah. Yeah. But, you know, we just like to keep it equal across the board and everything, and make sure that everybody's getting paid, you know, the same amount, and can feel equally valued. And, you know, it's weird to say all of this because I'm like, it feels like the ethos of our company is like, we know we've made mistakes. And so it feels very strange to go on and be like, this is how we're doing it, when there could be someone who's like, actually, you did it totally wrong. So
true.
Yeah. So we've learning.
We've learned a lot in 3 years.
Yes, we've learned a lot in 3 years. We're still learning. Like, bring it on, please, please, please. Not in any way saying that we've figured it out, but it's what we strive, because it's just like, it's better when everybody is having a good time and happy.
It really is. It really is. That's a good general life model, when you can make more people feel seen and happy and equal and represented. And like, you wouldn't think that a company saying like, we want everyone to be paid equally would be such a crazy statement. You know?
Yeah.
What? And
maybe we even have cheap or free tickets. I know that kind of works against the idea of paying people at all, but like, we also want to make sure that access to our shows is delivered equally. Right.
Wow. See, this is why I know the first time we met that I was like, I want to be friends with these people.
Likewise.
Glad.
And life keeps throwing us together, which I really super appreciate.
And all y'all audience out there, if anybody's listening and curious about our work, we have underlords.org, and you could find us on Instagram at We Are Underlords. Or just like Google us. I don't know. But we'd love to hear from you. You know, hopefully we'll get to do another show when this stinking pandemic's over, and you can come play with us.
Yeah.
Yes. I love that. And those are all in the comments of this YouTube page. So if you just go to like the bio, it has like both of your bios, and then it has a link to your website and to your Instagram. So like, definitely check them out. It's a worthwhile thing to like really get to know them, because especially as you're talking right now, like, I just wish I could have seen your other productions. I'm like, these sound so fascinating, and now I don't want to miss one moving forward.
Great.
We'll put you on the mailing list, which is really just a Gmail account and a BCC.
No mailing list. Yeah. It's just the two of us. Yeah. We're just here in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
That's perfect. So we have gotten to that point in today's conversation, which I feel like this has just flown right by. So thank you. It is Giving Tuesday, which feels especially meaningful that we could chat today, especially because we met through SheNYC. And just, would you like to talk more about them or any of the other nonprofits or charities that really lift you up?
I would like to talk about two. I would like to talk about SheNYC and Fresh Ground Pepper. Let's start with SheNYC. SheNYC produced two of their summer theater festival in New York City produced both the Human Incubator and Dancing Girl, which is how we met. They are a company that basically saw the inequity between representation in the theater landscape. And they're like, hold on a second, how come we've got, I don't remember the numbers right off the top of my head, but how come we've got like 60% of our Broadway audiences are women identifying, female identifying individuals, and yet they have there's such low representation when it comes to direction and producing and playwriting and just having any of the credits in the industry. And so their mission is to promote gender parity in the arts. This is the 6th year, the company, I believe, 6th, we're entering 7. But the company has spread to 3 cities. It's in New York, LA, and Atlanta. This summer, they put on the first ever SheNYC Arts Digital Theater Festival. So it was SheLA, SheATL, and SheNYC, and everyone had their own virtual theater festival, which was so awesome because it was all of these shows, and everyone had been prepping to do their shows live and in stage and in the partner theaters in those cities, but really rose to the challenge of creating awesome pieces for web consumption and
practically video art.
Oh my gosh.
And then you get to see all of them in all 3 cities. You don't have to leave your house.
Oh, it was amazing. It was like the best 2 weeks of the pandemic. I was like, it was like every single night. I was like, wow, this is great. And so they're a fantastic organization. They also run a Create Her program, which is run out of New York City, where they bring in high school students to learn more about playwriting and producing. They meet every Sunday or every other Sunday, or maybe every Sunday once a month, to talk to professionals in the industry, and then with assistance from the organization, produce 10-minute long pieces that they have done. They pair up with a writer and producing student, and they put on these 10-minute works. Actually, the final showcase for this cohort, I believe, is this Sunday. So please go to shenycarts.org to check it out. But they are awesome. They have been an artistic home for us, and so wonderful. I'm very proud to be the art director of the organization now as well. And so check them out. Give. They're running an awesome campaign.
They have a giving match today.
Yeah. So check that out, and we're doing well, but you can help them push it over the edge. So SheNYC, awesome. Thank you so much for everything. Fresh Ground Pepper NYC is another organization that is very near and dear to us. It was started by our friends and colleagues right when we got out of school, and was meant to be a place for emerging artists to grow, and kind of with the whole ethos of before a child learns to walk, it needs to learn how to crawl, but we should be celebrating those milestones at every step, and not be so anxious for that child to run and win a marathon that we forget to nourish it and support it in the moments when it's just learning how to like keep its knees from wobbling. And when it wobbles and falls on its butt, we're like, woohoo, okay, that didn't work, but next time. And so it's very much about just supporting people and making chances. I always like to say that we are an organization where if you're like, hi, I'm interested in theater, but I've never written a play before, it's like, we're the home for you. If you are Lin-Manuel Miranda and you're like, I really want to sculpt, I really want to be a sculptor, then come and try out, get a pound of clay and try it out and like fail gloriously. And we revel in delighted feedback, which is just kind of following the joy of what, of what you witnessed in a work. We are all process oriented. I am a co-creative director. It's also a very horizontalist company. I am a co-creative director with Jacqueline Backus, who's a playwright, Jenny Beth Snyder, who is a director, Andrew Scoville and Andrew Neisler, who are both directors as well. And that was actually also the company where we wrote the straight play of the Human Incubator.
Oh yeah.
Back when it was called Pregnant with 2 G's.
Before it was musical. Yeah.
Yeah. So they are another fantastic organization that you should look into and get involved with too, because now that, additionally, the pandemic has also granted the opportunity for that to go completely global. So if you've got an idea you want to try out, or if you're just like, hey, I want to talk about the world and art and it's like what we could do to make it better, it's an organization for you as well. And that is fgpnyc.org.
Those are both so amazing. It really, like, it's exciting to hear about these theater companies and just companies in general that really just want these horizontal way of looking at things, and that everyone has a great idea, and the best idea in the room wins, and all of that. That sounds really fun. I also want to just give a quick anecdote about why I love SheNYC. I met, it's one of those crazy things of when people say, just show up. You never know what's going to happen. Show up and either bring a business card or just be confident and go up to people. But at the Women of Broadway event last year, I saw them up on stage and I saw someone in the hallway after, and I was like, this seems like a really cool group. I'm new here. I'm trying to make it as a theater reporter and photographer. Like, let me go say hi. And I was like, hey, I'm Shoshana. I'm a theater reporter and photographer. Like, if you need anyone for either of those things, like, please consider hiring me. And they were like, oh, wow, that sounds great. And we had a nice conversation, took my card, kept in touch. And then like months later, we're like, hey, so we would love to hire you as a photographer for like, and capture all of our productions in the rehearsal process so that they have some that they can actually like use to promote it. And then a little bit during tech week. And I was like, this sounds phenomenal. And I just like was blown away that by just like having the confidence, which I feel like is really half the battle sometimes, to like get out of your own head and be like, hey, I think I might be good for this. I think we could do something together. And then them actually saying like, yeah, that's a great idea. How can we get more women or female identifying humans involved in the process? And I felt so welcomed as part of this like squad. And I was so excited to be able to do that and to photograph and then like see the productions. And it just was so exciting. And then when they had the Noteworthy series of the awesome artists and singer-songwriters that so I hope y'all can hear me. This is life.
He's noteworthy.
Noteworthy, yes. Life in the pandemic. That there was this Noteworthy concert and they asked me to film it and to be the MC. And what a treat to be able to do that. So you can check that out on the bwaySHO YouTube. Self-plug. And that was just a really cool event. And so I just wanted to say that both being able to see it like as a fan and someone in the profession, that I felt this was like, these are companies doing things the right way, that they're really like, if you had any questions or concern, they'd really hear you out. And that's what we need more of in life and in theater, is to feel like you can have a say in whatever you're thinking, and that you can ask for help, and that's okay. And you can be vulnerable, and that's welcomed. And especially like we've been saying this whole conversation. So I just feel like that really ties all together.
Yeah.
It's so it's so great to have found your people, It's so great to have found your people. It's gosh, I'm grateful, people.
It's really good.
People, my people.
We'll be here, I think we're just going to be in New York for our life, continue to build these companies and be a part of these communities. And I can't wait to be able to buy more tickets. I mean, hey, we'll do the virtual thing as long as we have to, but then also I'll be there at the fundraisers, buying tickets and clapping in audiences for decades to come for all these companies.
Yeah.
Yes. So is there anything else that you came into today wanting to make sure to share with everyone watching at home?
Oh boy. Please stay safe.
Yeah.
Please stay safe. We still have a lot of weeks to get through. And so just stay safe and keep those around you safe, and keep our essential workers safe, and keep your loved ones safe. And that's always on my mind. Yeah.
That's a good one. No, I got nothing else. I just, come at everything from a place of love, and you'll stay safe because you love your your fellow neighbors, and then with whatever you're doing during quarantine, enjoy it, make the best of it. See you on the other side.
Yeah, it's a crazy time, but we're probably not going to have another one like these. I mean, I hope not.
Oh my goodness.
So,
not.
let's make the best of it while we can, because next thing you know, it's going to be 2 years from now. I'm going to be like, man, I sure wish I didn't have to commute so much.
Yeah,
And
right.
at that point, we don't want to hear it.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And being grateful for sometimes the hardships in your life so that you can appreciate the good things, and that you can't have these highs without also experiencing some of the lows. And just, these are tough times, but see how maybe you can take classes online, or you can read more books, or you can spend more time with your dogs or your loved ones. And if you're not quarantining with them, you should spend that time virtually, because the holidays are coming up and have happened already. And just, it's not worth it to go travel right now outside of your pod. So if you're, because it's just, you want to be able to celebrate together in the future. And that's,
that's right.
Trying not to say too much, but please mask up, be safe, be kind to one another. And just a quick 2-second plug. As you can see here, this awesome bwaySHO logo is made by Chelsea Hill, who also designed this wonderful thing in the back, the I'll drink to that, which they were awesome. Big fan. Yeah, I wish it's like it could be closer, but it's very cool. Check out Illustrating Diva on Instagram. She is so cool. Big fan. So you can find me at bwaySHO on all the things. I now have a podcast, bwaySHO the podcast.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. And also we have the SHOTreons, which I've seen a couple of my awesome SHOTreons here. Andy, Eva, that's through the bwaySHO Patreon. So if that's something that sounds cool to you, check it out. And on that note, I thank you both so much for spending your time with me today and opening up. And you've just been so lovely.
Oh, you are so lovely, SHO. Thank you so much for having us. It is great to be in the world with you.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing what you do.
Positive vibe to you. Great. I look forward to all the future, encounters running down 42nd Street under the bright lights.
I know.
Running into you.
Can't wait to give you a big hug.
Yes, big hugs in the future, and big hugs to everyone at home watching. I appreciate y'all so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you at the show. Bye.
Bye.
See ya. Thank you. Bye-bye. Woo, 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 woo.